What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. On my third day in Ohio, and for those just joining us, yesterday I did an episode about my time in Ohio and some games that I played and how I was mistaken or how much I enjoyed some of the features in these games that I hadn't tried before. Today, I wanted to talk about my third day in Ohio when we went to a slot machine collector's house and saw some beautiful, beautiful restored slot machines and got to learn an awful lot about them. I hope to have that collector on here at some point in the nearish future so that he may provide us all with the benefit of some of this knowledge. Super nice guy. Everybody in Ohio that I met, of course, super nice. And really, I'd love to get back there again sometime in the nearish future as well. It was a good time. And had a whole lot of fun losing on a lot of different machines and different types of machines. So, back to the bingos. Played a bunch of bingos on that night, which was the final night I was there. But I learned that from the factory, Bally made two different kinds of back glasses. They would either screen using mirrored inks in the initial run, or they would do later runs of the back glasses without the mirroring, and that's from the Bally factory. So if you see a back glass that has gray ink in place of the mirroring, it's not necessarily a repro that was done without mirrored ink. It could have come from the Bally factory that way. I saw an absolutely gorgeous bikini back glass, the best I've ever seen, but it had zero mirroring, and I never would have guessed that it came from the factory that way. But apparently that's the case. As far as EM flipper games, I mentioned in the last episode Captain Fantastic and the Gottlieb Contest. But I also played a Bally Wizard, and that was great fun. It's one of 3 games that Bally produced with the flip flag feature. And on Wizard in particular, each of the flags gives you a different game advantage. It either lights the pops or gives you some additional gameplay feature. Cool game, a lot of fun. And when I got back to Richmond, I worked on a flip-flop. Flip-flop is the second of the 3 games that has the flip flags feature. This particular flip-flop had an issue with one of the relays that flips one of the flags. And in this case, it was flipping when it should have been flopping. No, actually it would flop just fine. It's just that it would flip back again immediately. And so, in lifting the playfield, you can see that there are different relays which control each of the flipping motions of each of the little domino targets. And then there is a relay that holds in to indicate the state. Well, the relay that holds in was working just fine, but the relay which initially fired needed a little bit of cleaning and some adjusting. And then all was well. That's a very fun game as well, flip-flop. You have the 3-inch flippers at the mid-play field and mushroom targets which will flip all the flags back. It's another one where you're trying to increase your bonus, of course, as many of those 70s EMs are, but I find that there's a lot to shoot for on flip-flop. Very fun. Let's see, some solid-state stuff, but as far as EMs go, I also worked on the satin doll that I worked on some time ago, it had developed a couple of issues after being brought back to life. And so spent some time on that, got that one going, fixed a couple of odd idiosyncrasies. But one thing that's important to note in any Williams game with bonus, or any game with bonus really, is to ensure that the bonus counter is stepping down and up appropriately. And of course, I've harped on and on about the importance of steppers and their smooth movement and yada yada. I'm sure you're all sick of hearing it, but it's equally important, even if the stepper is clean, to ensure that the movement is smooth from position 0 to 1, because, as many of you know, the bonus amount does not start at 0 on many of these bonus games. It starts at 1. It shows 1000 lit by default. So it's very important that the game can reset and then step up from 0 to 1 easily. Well, in this case, the coil stop had tried to separate from the rest of the coil. It had actually lost one of the screws, so got that replaced and tightened way down, and then the stepper was having trouble stepping, so loosened the nut. It's one of the Williams style where there's a gear in the back. You put a slotted screwdriver through the hole and wedge it in there, basically, and then you're able to loosen the nut on the front and access the stepper guts. Well, did that, took it apart, went ahead and gave it another cleaning just to make sure, re-lubed it, reassembled it, and it still had a little bit of difficulty stepping from 0 to 1. Well, Williams steppers, I've found, can be a little finicky in how far you have to tighten that nut, and in this case, I had over-tightened it a little bit, so I had to loosen it a bit. Well then, it still had a bit of an issue. If I stepped it manually, not a problem. It was flawless. Buttery smooth stepper action. But in stepping from 0 to 1, the machine would sometimes have to cycle 2-3 times in order to do it. Well, this is a control unit problem, because as part of the startup sequence from ball to ball, the control unit has to cycle in order to count down your bonus. Then it has to cycle in order to reset your bonus, trigger the out-hole relay, kick the ball into the shooter lane, and then go from there. Of course, that can't happen unless the bonus has counted down and then back up to the first position. So, I will say again that that game is quite a lot of fun. I was again surprised at how smooth the gameplay is on that, and how easy it is to feel like you're actually going to hit the appropriate target. And then you don't. So, let's see. Other than that, I got home and fired up the games in the game room. Ava had a friend spend the night, and the next morning the father came over to pick up his daughter and turned on the games for him, and the main fuse in Mystery blew, so I've got to take that away from the wall and take a peek inside the head and see what's going on there. And other than that, Ava and I have been chipping away at the Turf King. We've had various breaks as we go, but I've been updating the Pinside thread with information on that. Now, we're not doing a full restore, we're not making it look factory fresh, but the cosmetic things that we're doing are either to enhance the feel of the game during gameplay, or just something that I want to teach her how to do. So there's that. Tonight, for example, we did some simple electroplating in order to replace the missing chrome plate on the side rails where hundreds and hundreds of people's hands had been and worn away. So had our sand, and we used this thing called a plug-in plate, which I did some research on and seemed like a good deal. And it was, I think, $35. And basically it just comes with a little wall wart transformer. You plug it in, you clip one end to the metal thing that you're trying to replate, and then you push the other end, which is a banana connector, into the back of this wand, which has some metallic strips bent at particular angles. You wrap it with a gauze bandage, dip the gauze bandage in a solution, and as you move the wet bandage across the metallic surface, it will plate. Pretty cool, and it's a really simple way for me to teach her how electroplating works without having to go a much more expensive or dangerous route. Now, as part of this, we had to sand away some of the remaining chrome. And of course, the problem with doing just some is that if you look real close, you'll see there are still some bumps. But, as I say, the primary function is really to teach her. The secondary function is just to make it so it's comfortable to hold that side rail, which it is. So, mission accomplished, I think, in both cases. I'm pretty proud of her. She made her first soup tonight. And in Sophie news, she has started to read, and she is reading voraciously. She's just reading everything that she possibly can, which is pretty cool. So, things are going pretty good, and everything is coming along here. Two other major developments here recently. I was given the ability to add games to the Pinside archive and given the blessing to go ahead and add the bingos to them. And I've gone ahead and added all of the Bally and United bingos to the archive, which is pretty great. So at this point, you can link any bingo to any topic of discussion, which allows you to search through the archive to find a particular game. The other major thing related to Pinside is that someone has proposed that there be a bingo subforum. And I had done this some time ago, and that caused the creation of the Flipperless subforum, which I've enjoyed. But the Flipperless, of course, contains a bunch of stuff that is not bingo. And there are more and more new bingo folks coming on. And so the proposal was again made to make a bingo subforum. Well, at this point, as of today, they have not made a bingo subforum yet, but there's a poll open if you'd like for them to add a bingo subforum. And essentially all this would let you do is filter straight down the bingo topics. So you could see, for example, the topic that I started about bingo finds on Craigslist and eBay. You can filter down to technical discussions on the bingos, artwork discussions, etc., which right now are just scattered to all corners of the earth, or the forum, anyway. As anticipated, we're continuing our march towards episode 365, at which point I have something very special planned, as well as pulling back the reins a bit on the frequency of podcasting. So if you're expecting a daily update after episode 365, unfortunately, I'm going to move to a bi-weekly format. So once every 2 weeks, you'll get your Nick fix. And other than that, you'll have the previous 365 episodes to which you can refer. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.